Tom woke before sunrise because the small apartment felt too quiet after 5, and the silence always made his thoughts louder. He moved gently so he would not wake his son Leo, who slept on the sofa under a thin blanket with one arm wrapped around a school bag like it was a pillow. Tom stood for a second and watched Leo breathe because that steady breathing was the only thing that made Tom feel sure about anything. He went to the tiny kitchen and boiled water and made simple breakfast and packed a small lunch with what he had left. He checked Leo's uniform and fixed a loose button and placed the lunch in the bag and set the bag near the door. Tom did not have much, but he had a routine, and that routine kept him moving, even when his mind tried to slow him down. He washed his face and tied his old work shoes and looked at his reflection, and practiced a calm expression because he did not want Leo to see worry. When Leo woke, Tom spoke softly and made a small joke, and Leo smiled in a sleepy way, and that smile made Tom's chest feel lighter for a moment. They left the apartment together and walked down the stairs and stepped into the cool morning air. Tom held Leo's hand while crossing the road, and Leo talked about a class project, and Tom nodded and listened like it was the most important news in the world. At the school gate, Tom bent down and reminded Leo to stay close to teachers and to be kind and to come straight home after class. Leo nodded and ran inside and turned back to wave, and Tom waved back until the crowd swallowed Leo and the day became quiet again. Tom then headed toward the tall glass building where he had worked for years, and he tried to tell himself that today would be normal. He walked with steady steps, but inside he felt a strange pressure, like the city air had become heavier. At the entrance he greeted the guard, and the guard returned the greeting but looked uncomfortable, like he already knew something. Tom noticed it, but said nothing because he did not want trouble, and he did not want rumors to reach him before facts did. Inside the building the floors shone, and the air smelled like cleaning spray, and the elevators moved like silent machines. Tom went to his usual area and began checking a maintenance list because that was what he always did, and work was the safest place to hide from fear. A message came asking him to report to a meeting room on the top floor, and the words were polite, but the timing felt wrong. Tom wiped his hands and straightened his shirt and took the elevator up and watched the numbers climb while his stomach tightened. The meeting room was colder than the rest of the building, and the long table looked too perfect and too empty. 2 managers sat on one side with papers in front of them, and at the head of the table sat a woman Tom had seen only in company emails. Her name was Anna, and she was the new chief executive, and people said she was smart and fast and strict. Anna looked at a document and then looked up at Tom with a face that showed no anger and no kindness and only decision. One manager spoke about new plans and cost changes and restructuring, and the words sounded smooth but sharp at the same time. Tom listened and tried to keep his breathing slow because he could already guess what was coming. Then the manager said Tom's position would be removed and his services were no longer required, and they thanked him for his time. Tom felt his ears ring, but he kept his face steady because he had learned long ago that public anger never helped a man who needed work. Anna spoke briefly and said the company had to move forward, and she wished him well, and her voice stayed calm like she was reading weather updates. Tom looked at her and waited for a sign that she understood what this meant for him, but her eyes moved back to the paper. He nodded once and said he understood and thanked them because pride was sometimes the last thing a man could control. He signed what they asked and collected his things in a small box that held a mug and a photo of Leo and a few tools he had bought himself. He walked out of the room, and the hallway lights seemed brighter than before, and the building felt less like a workplace and more like a stranger. He passed people he knew, and some avoided his eyes and some looked sad, and no one stopped him because everyone feared being next. When he reached the lobby he stepped outside, and the city noise hit him like waves, and he stood still for a moment. He did not know where to go because his next step was supposed to be back to work, but work no longer existed for him. He walked without a plan because moving was easier than thinking, and he told himself he would figure it out by evening. He thought about rent and bills and Leo's school needs, and he felt a tight knot behind his ribs that would not loosen. He did not call anyone because he did not want pity, and he did not want questions he could not answer. He kept walking until he reached a business plaza near a bank, and he sat on a low wall and placed the box beside him. He stared at people rushing past in suits and coats, and he wondered how many of them were one bad meeting away from losing everything. The wind cut through the street, and Tom pulled his jacket closer and tried to plan tomorrow, even though today had not finished yet. That was when he heard a sharp shout that did not belong to normal city noise. A second shout followed, and then a burst of panic moved through the plaza like a ripple through water. People turned and started running, and some dropped bags and others raised phones with shaking hands. Tom stood up fast because fear in a crowd could turn deadly even without anyone meaning it. He looked toward the bank entrance and saw masked men rush out with hurried steps and wild energy. One of them carried a bag that looked heavy, and another pointed something that made people freeze and then scatter faster. Tom's body went cold, but his mind became clear because danger had a way of focusing him. He noticed one man pulling a woman by the arm as if she was a shield, and her heels slipped on the stone. The woman did not scream, but her face was pale, and her eyes were alert and angry, as if she refused to break. Tom did not know her name and did not care about titles in that moment, because he only saw a person being dragged. His first thought was Leo, and the second thought was that Leo needed a father who could live with himself. Tom scanned the ground and saw a fallen metal barrier near the plaza edge and grabbed it with both hands. He stepped into the path of the thieves and held the barrier out to slow them, and his arms shook but his feet stayed planted. A thief yelled and moved toward him, and Tom shifted the barrier to block, and he kept his eyes on their hands and their feet. He did not charge blindly, and he did not try to be a hero for attention, and he simply tried to create a chance for the woman to break free. The thief swung and Tom ducked and used the barrier to push the man off balance, and the bag of money dipped low. The woman jerked her arm free and stumbled back, and Tom moved between her and the thieves like a wall. A second thief rushed in, and Tom stepped sideways and used the barrier to strike the ground hard to startle them, and by a half-second. People screamed nearby, and some hid behind pillars, and someone finally shouted that the police were coming. Tom heard distant sirens, and that sound gave him a clear goal, which was to hold the line until help arrived. The thieves tried to circle, and Tom kept turning with them, and he used the wide space of the barrier to control distance. One thief slipped on the edge of the barrier and fell, and the heavy bag hit the ground and coins or metal clinked inside. Tom did not grab the bag because he was not there for money, and he was there to keep people safe. A third thief hesitated and looked toward the street because the sirens grew louder and the crowd began to push back. In the chaos, the woman who had been dragged stood behind Tom and stared at him with wide eyes. Her gaze was fixed on his face like she was trying to match him to a memory from earlier in the day. Tom did not look back because he stayed focused on the threat in front of him. The thieves finally broke and ran as the sound of police vehicles closed in fast. Tom lowered the barrier and took a deep breath that burned his lungs, and he felt his hands tremble after the danger passed. He turned slightly, and the woman stepped forward, and her expression shifted from shock to something heavier. Tom recognized her at last, and the ground seemed to tilt because she was Anna, the very person who had fired him that morning. Anna looked at him like she could not understand what had just happened, and her lips parted as if to speak. Tom held the barrier at his side and stared back, and both of them stood in the noisy plaza realizing this was only the beginning. Police vehicles filled the plaza and officers moved fast and controlled, and the crowd slowly pulled back while the noise settled. Tom stepped aside when an officer asked him to, and he placed the metal barrier on the ground and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. His heart was still racing, and his arms felt heavy and weak now that the danger had passed. Anna stood close by and wrapped her coat tighter around herself, and her eyes never left Tom. An officer asked questions, and Tom answered simply because he had nothing to hide and no energy to explain more than needed. The woman officer nodded and thanked him and said he had helped prevent something much worse. Tom nodded back, but his thoughts were already moving away from the scene and toward his son and the long walk home. He bent to pick up his small box and held it under his arm like it was suddenly fragile. Anna took a step toward him and said his name softly, and Tom stopped because hearing his name from her felt strange. She apologized quickly and said she had not known who he was at first, and then stopped as if unsure what to say next. Tom looked at her and felt no anger rise, and that surprised him more than anything else. He said it was fine and that people did what they had to do, and he hoped she was safe. Anna looked shocked by his calm and asked if he was hurt, and Tom shook his head. For a moment neither spoke, and the space between them felt heavy with things unsaid. Anna then asked if he had time to talk, and Tom hesitated because time was something he no longer felt he owned. He thought of Leo waiting after school, and he said he could walk a little, but not long. They moved away from the flashing lights and found a quieter street nearby where traffic flowed steady and unaware. Anna walked beside Tom and matched his pace, and her heels clicked softly on the pavement. She thanked him again and said she owed him her safety and possibly more. Tom replied that he did what anyone should do and that he did not want a reward. Anna slowed and said she wanted to understand him and why he stepped in without hesitation. Tom looked ahead and said he was a father and that was reason enough. Anna absorbed that and nodded slowly, and her face softened in a way Tom had not seen before. She asked about Leo and Tom spoke carefully but honestly about school and homework and small dreams. As he spoke he noticed Anna listening without checking her phone or scanning the street. They reached a small cafe and Anna asked if he would sit for a few minutes and Tom agreed. Inside the cafe the air was warm and smelled of bread and coffee and the noise felt gentle after the chaos. They sat at a corner table and Anna ordered tea for both of them without asking and Tom did not object. For a few moments they drank in silence and Tom felt the shaking in his hands finally ease. Anna then spoke about the meeting that morning and said it had been rushed and driven by numbers. She admitted she had not looked closely enough at the people behind the roles. Tom listened and felt the knot in his chest tighten because words did not change reality. He said he understood business decisions but consequences did not end at office doors. Anna agreed and said she had learned that in a very real way today. She asked about his work history and Tom explained his years of service and the systems he kept running quietly. Anna's eyes widened slightly as she realized how much depended on work she had overlooked. She admitted the company had already faced a small issue since his departure that morning. Tom smiled faintly and said machines often missed people when they were gone. Anna asked what he planned to do next and Tom answered honestly that he did not know yet. He said he would find something because he had to and because Leo depended on him. Anna looked thoughtful and then said she would like to make things right if he would allow it. Tom stiffened slightly and said he did not want pity or favors tied to fear. Anna shook her head and said this was about respect and correction, not fear. She said she wanted him back but not as before and with real authority over operations. Tom was silent and weighed the words carefully because hope could be dangerous. He asked what changed and Anna answered that seeing him act without reward had shown her what kind of leader he was. Tom said leadership was doing the job even when no one watched. Anna smiled and said she was beginning to learn that. She offered to formalize the role properly and give him security and growth. Tom asked for time because big decisions deserved calm minds. Anna agreed and gave him her direct contact and said there was no pressure. They stood to leave and Anna thanked him again and said she hoped to see him soon. Tom stepped outside and felt the city air again and this time it felt lighter. He walked toward the bus stop and checked the time and realized he was still early to pick up Leo. As he waited he replayed the day in his mind and felt tired but steady. The bus arrived and Tom boarded and found a seat near the window. He watched the city pass and thought about how close life came to breaking in many ways today. When he reached the school he stood by the gate and waited with other parents. Leo ran out smiling and hugged him hard and Tom hugged back just as tight. Leo asked about his day and Tom said it was long but interesting. They walked home together and Leo talked about class and a drawing he made. Tom listened and nodded and felt grateful for ordinary moments. That night after dinner Leo slept early and Tom sat at the table with the contact card in his hand. He stared at it and felt a cautious spark of hope grow quietly. He knew tomorrow would matter more than today. Tom woke again before sunrise and this time the silence felt different because his mind had not stopped moving all night. He had slept in short pieces and each time he woke he saw the small card on the table and remembered Anna's face and the sirens and the plaza. Leo still slept on the sofa and Tom watched him for a moment and felt that familiar mix of love and responsibility settle into his chest. Tom made breakfast and kept the routine steady because routine was a shield when life tried to change too fast. Leo ate and spoke about a quiz and a friend at school and Tom smiled and answered in small warm lines. Tom walked Leo to the school gate and waited until Leo disappeared inside and then Tom stood still as if the city might give him a sign. He finally took out the card and looked at the number and felt his thumb hover over the screen. He did not want to chase a promise that could vanish, and he did not want to let pride steal a chance for Leo. Tom called and the line rang once and then Anna answered as if she had been holding the phone already. She asked if he was safe and if Leo was well, and Tom said yes and thanked her for asking. Anna told him she wanted to meet today, and she suggested a time and place near the office. Tom agreed and said he would come, but he also said he wanted clarity, not comfort words. Anna respected that and told him she would bring the right people and the right papers. Tom ended the call and felt his heart beat faster, not from fear but from the weight of choice. He returned home and changed into his cleanest shirt and checked his shoes and smoothed his hair. He left Leo with a trusted neighbor for the afternoon and promised Leo he would be back before dinner. Leo nodded and asked if Tom was going to a new job, and Tom said maybe, and Leo smiled with quiet hope. Tom rode the bus toward the business district and watched buildings pass like tall silent judges. He arrived early and stood outside the meeting place and breathed slowly to calm his thoughts. Anna arrived with a simple coat and no guards, and she looked less like a distant leader and more like a tired person trying to do better. She greeted Tom by name and asked him to sit, and they took a table near the window. Anna placed a folder on the table and turned it toward Tom and said she wanted to start with honesty. She explained that the company had been under pressure and that some board members wanted quick cuts and fast changes. She admitted she had pushed the decision through without walking the floors and without learning who kept the place running. Tom listened and kept his face calm, but inside he felt the old sting of being unseen. Anna then told him something that surprised him because she said the board was already asking questions about the incident at the bank. She said there were cameras and witness reports and the story was spreading through the district. Tom frowned and asked why that mattered, and Anna said it mattered because people would use it for their own goals. She said some board members wanted to present her as a hero and some wanted to present her as careless, and she did not want either lie. She said the truth was simple, that Tom had acted and she had been protected, and she wanted that truth respected. Tom looked at her and saw that she was not speaking for show, and that made him listen harder. Anna slid a page forward and explained the role she offered, which was operations lead with real control and fair pay. She said it was not charity and it was correction, and she would explain it to the board as a smart decision. Tom read the paper slowly and asked direct questions about hours and responsibilities and safety and future growth. Anna answered each question clearly, and she did not rush him and she did not hide details. Tom then asked about the manager who had delivered the news that morning, and Anna said she had already started an internal review. Tom said he did not want revenge, and Anna nodded and said she wanted standards, not revenge. Tom asked why she trusted him after only one day, and Anna said she did not trust easily, but she trusted actions. She said she had seen many people talk about values and she had seen Tom live them without cameras in mind. Tom felt uncomfortable hearing praise, but he understood the point and he nodded once. He said he would accept if the role allowed him to still be a father first. Anna smiled slightly and said she respected that, and she could shape the schedule to protect his evenings with Leo. Tom felt the knot in his chest loosen because it was the first time someone in power had spoken about his life like it mattered. He signed the preliminary papers and agreed to begin after a short onboarding meeting the next day. Anna looked relieved and also determined, as if she had just fixed a crack before it became a break. They stood to leave, and Anna said she also wanted to discuss another matter that might be harder. Tom asked what she meant, and Anna said there had been something wrong about the bank incident. She said the thieves moved too directly, as if they knew where to go and when to move. Tom said it had felt reckless and loud, and she agreed and said one thief had looked toward her before grabbing her. Anna lowered her voice and said she feared she had been targeted not by chance but by someone who wanted her scared. Tom felt his shoulders tighten and he asked if she had enemies, and Anna said powerful changes create enemies. She said she had recently refused a suspicious deal that would have benefited one supplier and harmed the company long term. She said that supplier was connected to people who did not like being told no. Tom listened and remembered the quick glances and the planned path, and he agreed it could have been more than random. Anna said the police were investigating, but she did not fully trust that the full truth would surface quickly. Tom asked what she wanted from him, and Anna said she wanted his eyes and his sense of real life. She said he understood buildings and systems and people and patterns, and she needed that right now. Tom did not like the idea of danger near his life, but he also knew he had stepped into it already. He told Anna he would help, but only if Leo stayed protected from any fallout. Anna promised she would keep the matter quiet and secure, and she would arrange safety steps without alarming anyone. Tom left the meeting and walked toward the bus stop with a folder in his hand and a new job in his mind. But he also carried a new worry because the bank incident no longer felt like a single bad moment. When he reached home, Leo ran to him and asked if there was good news, and Tom said yes, there might be. Leo hugged him, and Tom held the hug longer than usual because he suddenly understood how close everything could come to falling apart. That evening Tom cooked a simple meal and helped Leo with homework and tried to act normal. After Leo slept, Tom sat by the window and read the papers again and thought about Anna's words about being targeted. He looked out at the streetlights and felt a strange pull between hope and caution. He knew tomorrow would bring more than paperwork. He knew it would bring answers and maybe another test of who he was. Tom arrived at the office early the next morning, and the building felt different to him now, as if it recognized his return. He moved through the halls with calm steps and greeted workers by name because he had always believed respect traveled faster than authority. People noticed him, and some whispered because news traveled quickly in tall buildings with thin walls. Anna met him near the operations floor and introduced him properly this time, and her voice carried certainty. She explained his role clearly and said decisions would go through him and that safety and stability mattered more than shortcuts. Tom felt the weight of the words but also felt ready because responsibility had never scared him as much as uncertainty had. He spent the morning walking through systems and listening to staff and fixing small problems that had been ignored. By noon the building already felt smoother and quieter, and people worked with less tension. Anna watched from a distance and realized that leadership did not always announce itself loudly. Later that day, Tom noticed something that did not sit right with him, and it was a delivery request that bypassed normal checks. He paused it and asked questions, and the answers came slow and unclear. Tom asked for records and saw a pattern of rushed approvals connected to the same supplier Anna had mentioned. He informed Anna calmly, and she trusted his judgment and allowed him to dig deeper. Over the next days, Tom uncovered more details that pointed toward pressure tactics meant to scare Anna into reversing her decision. Nothing was loud or obvious, but everything lined up when viewed together. Tom worked closely with internal teams and quietly secured systems and adjusted access routes. Anna supported every move and learned quickly how much strength came from steady preparation. Meanwhile, Tom kept his evenings free and returned home to Leo with the same routines and small jokes. Leo noticed the lighter tone in his father's voice and felt safer without knowing why. One evening as Tom walked Leo home from school, a car slowed near them and then drove off quickly. Tom felt a chill and memorized the shape and color without showing fear. He reported it quietly, and extra precautions were taken without alarms. Days later, investigators confirmed the pressure campaign and stepped in with clear evidence. The threat faded not with drama but with quiet resolution because preparation had removed its power. Anna thanked Tom privately and said his calm approach had protected both the company and her. Tom replied that protecting people was easier when leaders listened. The board recognized the value of the changes and approved Tom's role fully with long-term security. Tom accepted without celebration because the real victory was stability. At home, Tom cooked dinner and Leo asked if everything was okay, and Tom said yes, it really was. They ate together and talked about small dreams and weekend plans. Tom realized that saving someone once had led him to save his own future as well. Anna continued to lead with more awareness and often asked Tom for perspective before major decisions. The building became a place where people felt seen and work felt shared. Months later, Tom and Leo walked past the same plaza where everything had changed. The memory felt distant now, like a lesson instead of a wound. Tom held Leo's hand and felt proud, not because he had stopped danger, but because he had chosen the right path afterward. Life moved forward quietly and steadily, and that was enough.